Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's me, your bald-headed senpai, back with another video for you. And today we are going to be talking about why you should get into Ikigami, the ultimate limit. I am still very much so in that phase of either buying stuff based solely on the cover or something solely based on recommendations. I'm really not a read the synopsis type of person. It doesn't really work for me. But this series came highly recommended from GeminiManga, who I love and adore, and he has talked about this series multiple times on his channel. And I would say that typically we have very similar taste in manga series, manga titles and stuff like that, with the exception of Fullmetal Alchemist, which, I'm sorry, don't hate me. But yeah, so he's again talked about this multiple times on his channel, and I feel like every time he's mentioned it, it's just made me a little bit more intrigued. Okay, sign me up, fam. I'm about it. I went into this series expecting to like it simply because it comes from somebody whose opinion in manga I trust. That's Fren, we got the vibe. I was not expecting to absolutely adore, love, feel like this is a masterpiece that isn't talked about enough. So I am here to bless you with a much needed review. The series is called Ikigami, the Ultimate Limit, and it is written by Motoro Mase, and it is published by Viz Media. It's a seinen psychological thriller, and it's definitely for more mature audiences. I will get into the trigger warnings at the end of the video, so if you watch nothing else but you're thinking about trying Ikigami, skip towards the end so you can at least hear what the trigger warnings are, because there's a couple. So like I was saying, I was expecting to like it. I wasn't necessarily expecting to be absolutely wowed by it, which I absolutely was, totally am, and you will hopefully be too. So to give you a to give you the synopsis of the series without giving away too much, basically this takes place in a low-key but not very low-key dystopian society where there's this law called the National Welfare Act, where 1 out of 1,000 people are randomly selected and given a nanocapsule that will eventually rupture in their heart between the ages of 18 and 24. So the whole purpose of this government-sanctioned law that affects all of their society is that, not knowing if you might be one of those 1 in 1,000 people who's going to die between the ages of 18 and 24, which is pretty young, the idea that you might die at such a young age will increase your vigor and your desire to live a fruitful and bountiful life, that it will increase civic productivity, it will increase the value of life, since there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that you might be the person that ends up dying. Just right off the bat, it's interesting. One of the things that I was a bit worried about that would have affected my not liking the series was the fact that I typically don't like anything where I know that the character is going to die or the character has already died and we're kind of going back. A lot of prequels usually kind of fall short for me because unless you're doing really exceptionally well world building, I typically don't care. I just find it really hard to really engage with the character sometimes, or really feel like any type of connection, any interest really, when I know the stakes, and the stakes are you're dead. For the sake of all that making sense, the series is episodic. You're basically following Fujimoto, who is a deliverer of the Ikigami. And the Ikigami are these little certificates that basically have a person's name, their birth date, and the day and time when they are going to die. Now, when I say that they are going to die after they've received this Ikigami, like, they are going to die. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We are not escaping the fate of this preordained death through the way of willpower, determination, and our belief in the heart of the cards. No. Once you get your Ikigami, you're dead. It's a wrap. It's over. You're dead. So again, that kind of goes back into my initial hesitance into really embracing the series right off the bat. What are you going to be doing in your last 24 hours that's going to be so engaging to me that I'm really going to care and be interested in you and your story? When you combine that with the fact that there's going to be multiple characters receiving Ikigami, because this is an episodic series, it's kind of like, so you're going to show me a lot of characters who I know are all going to die, and you think you can make me care about them? If the whole story for me and the characters had actually been lacking, it is definitely a series that I would have continued for the art alone. It is absolutely breathtaking. It is so expressive. It's honestly so engaging and emotionally heart-pulling. Like, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's that. Literally, like the second page, I'm automatically like synced in, I'm invested, I'm interested. It's like, okay, what's going on? I need to know. I think if you're a person who really gets into a manga series based off of the art, I think you should definitely check this one out. There are so many great mangakas, so many great artists that we talk about, like just as a whole in the community. And honestly, we need to be talking about Motoromase as well. A lot of times what I like to do is when I want a separate opinion or some kind of unbiased thoughts on something that I'm reading or enjoying, I usually ask my mother to step in and to just give it a little glance. So my mother actually ended up reading the first volume of this series, and the biggest thing that she took away from it was the fact that the art is so expressive and it conveys so much of the story that this is probably something that you could read in a different language or like just no text at all, and you'd probably still be able to follow along with what's happening, if not the particulars of the actual story, which is really high praise. But yeah, just some of the most amazing full panel pages that I've ever seen. A lot of, again, use of perspective to kind of make you feel closer or further away from a lot of the characters. There's definitely moments when it's like, wow, I'm delivering the Ikigami, and then other moments where it's like, wow, I'm receiving an Ikigami. The artwork is just absolutely insane, and I can't express it enough, but I literally could, and it would take me like for the rest of my life. So we're just gonna go ahead and move on. These stories still really holds up. It has a really dense world, which is really fascinating that Motoromase was able to create that in literally only 10 volumes, and to not feel like you're being overwhelmed as you go into it, because there's definitely some history as to how the National Welfare Act came about, things that happen to the people who receive the Ikigamis, how they go about their last 24 hours, and things that can happen that will either behoove them or not. There's just a lot of really small, organic, and really kind of simplistic things that go into the story that just really build up this really rich world that feels really complete, with no plot holes, no openings, or anything like that. And I really appreciated the fact that all of the world building doesn't necessarily jump out at you. You're not bombarded with all of this information, all of this background story, all of this history, like at the beginning of the series or midway. It's a lot of information that's really well spread out through the series, and it just kind of grows on top of itself, which I personally just really appreciate it, because if you info dump on me, I'm gonna dump the info out. Sorry. So one of the last components of this series that I absolutely enjoyed and was thoroughly engaged by, and is something that I think other people will appreciate, has to be the actual characters. I wouldn't necessarily say that I am solely a character-driven reader. It doesn't really matter to me if they're a good character or a bad character. Be doing something, be about something, and let it be real and convincing. Ikigami gets it right. You only have 24 hours with the characters that are given the Ikigami, and you're essentially following them through their last day. None of the people that you follow have the same story. All of them come from different backgrounds, different home lives, different experiences, and their values are all very different. So you don't necessarily get only good people and you're like, man, it really sucks that you're gonna die young. And you don't necessarily only get bad people who you're thinking, dang, okay, you gotta go, fam. For the good of us all, you just gotta die. It's really not that cut and dry. Regardless of how I personally felt about their decisions, I absolutely loved, enjoyed, and felt completely engaged by all of the characters. All of them were noticeable, all of them had their own feel, all of them had their own issues, values, beliefs, and it just came across as experiencing some of the most honest written characters that I've seen just in general across any medium. You only get this little snapshot, you know, of the end of their life, and then they're gone. They're written in such a dynamic way. It's just So to wrap up the rest of this video, there's a lot of other kind of smaller things that I really appreciated about Ikigami that also might interest you. I'm hoping if you haven't like already decided that you're gonna go run out today and buy the series and read it, because this review has moved you, completely moved you. I think that there are a lot of really great themes that were explored in Ikigami. Obviously, one of the biggest ones is life, death, what could be or what is considered a good life or a life that is worth living. Specifically, one of the things that I really liked about this is there's definitely a good sense of underlining conflict between the older generation and the younger generation that are still eligible to receive the Ikigami. There's people who don't agree with the National Werefoe Act, and I'm not gonna get too much into it because that plays a part into the series as well. But you see, a lot of the people that really are for it are the older generation. It provides a really good amount of tension that I feel kind of runs through the whole story, just kind of like this really turbulent undercurrent. On top of that, you definitely have the idea of modern values and ideas versus like traditionalism. There's definitely this war between civic duty and personal choice. There's even things like, you know, family versus yourself. Is it necessarily that important to think of your family in the bigger picture overall, or is it okay to be selfish in your last 24 hours and do what you feel like you need to do personally? Just a lot of things that really were kind of thought-provoking and really made me kind of want to sit down and be like, huh, if I did have 24 hours, would I want to do the right thing? Would I want to spend the last moments with my family? Would I want to go out and get revenge? The little lady that cut me off in the grocery parking lot today. It's always good to just enjoy something, a series, any medium, a movie, a show, or something, and just say that you get just a general sense of enjoyment from it. But it's also really fun and cool to have something that really follows you and you kind of end up thinking about it, marinating on it. I think it's definitely a series where if you read it more than once, I think you'll find different things about it that you didn't notice before, that you'll find more themes, more questions that you might have for yourself, more foreshadowing. Like looking back on it now, there's definitely some things that I'm like, huh, okay, I see what you did there. I see where you're going. Just overall, Ikigami: The Ultimate Limit is the ultimate series. It is definitely one of the top 5 series that I have read this year, without a doubt. It's just so good. I will say though that there's definitely some triggering aspects to the series. So you definitely have instances of substance abuse, you have sexual assault, you have domestic violence. Gonna add on bullying, self-harm, and suicide. Good as it is, as amazing as it is, and as much as I love it, it definitely isn't for everybody, especially if any of those things might, you know, trigger you or something like that. So if you do end up picking this up, giving it a try, definitely be wary, whichever one.
Both is good.
I don't want to say it's graphic, but it is a very up close, in your face type of series. So I don't know how to describe it. You just find yourself really close to what's happening and really close to the characters. So a lot of the stuff really feels like in your face, even if it isn't necessarily drawn too explicitly. I hope it makes sense. Just be careful if you're gonna read it. So yeah, this is your bald-headed senpai signing out, and yeah, you should get into Ikigami.